What the Sam Hill's going on here?
The Rewatch Podcast presents the Lois and Clark Rewatch, dedicated to the series Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman on ABC. Join us each week as we investigate the origins of the Man of Steel and uncover crime in Metropolis. Send your feedback to the Rewatch Podcast at gmail.com. Join us on Facebook at facebook.com/rewatchpodcast or follow us on Twitter at rewatchpod.
Oh, hey! Let's get back to it.
And welcome back to the Rewatch Podcast and our Lois and Clark Rewatch. I'm Cory.
And I'm Superman. No, really, Penny, I am. Give me a call. I'm Superman. Really, I am. You know? At least for this weekend.
As far as you know.
Exactly.
Yes, indeed. Thank you for joining us, everyone. We're here to discuss 2 more episodes of Lois and Clark, and this week's headline reads, Clark, a.k.a. Superman?
It's so dead on.
The secret's out. This was like a difficult one to mash a headline together.
Yeah. Seriously, yeah. Very difficult.
So we're discussing Lois and Clark's and aka Superman. But before we get into it, you have a little follow-up?
Yeah, I felt for sure this was a 3-parter. I thought it was going to be a longer storyline, I was positive. In my head, I remembered. And I think what I did was I just mashed up this one with the original one where she goes to the alternate universe. Because I felt like we were going to see more of the alternate universe, and I don't know. And it sort of plays into the back issues a little bit. Because other people were thinking the same thing. Yeah. They were hoping for a little more there. So, yeah. Oh, well. We move on.
Well, it's pretty grand as it is. So shall we get into this second of 2 parts?
Yes.
The first episode discussion today is Lois and Clark's, written by Eugenie Ross Lemming and Brad Buckner, directed by Chris Long, and this originally aired on March 9th of 1997.
I'm dreadfully sorry. Miss Lane!
H.G. Wells, Mr. Wells, Tempest is out.
I feared as much.
He's President of the United States.
Catastrophic. And Miss Lane, has something happened to Superman?
Yeah.
That's why I'm here. I was visiting the future. The wonderful utopia there suddenly changed to a world of chaos and mayhem. The statue of you and Superman honoring you for your good work vanished.
Does that mean Clark is dead?
Oh, it means he's not present.
Tempest tricked him into stepping into this time window, and then it exploded. But you could travel through time. You could find him.
No, my dear. It's not so simple. You see, if the time window exploded, then Clark has been vanished to a nanosecond that's actually out of time as we know it. A vortex without past or future. Finding him would be...
impossible.
You know I don't like that word, but the longer Clark remains in the time warp, in the next 48 hours, it could diminish until it vanishes into nothing.
In a world without a Superman, it seems that Tempest is on his way to total domination. However, a wrench is thrown into his plans when H.G. Wells shows up with Superman, albeit the one from the alternative universe Lois visited a few years ago. Alt Clark goes into action and saves a few people from a public execution for not using telephones, revealing to Tempest his existence. Tempest manages to kidnap Wells and has planned a new way of using his subliminator through the power lines. Alt Clark and Lois work together to try and find Tempest's hideout, with Alt Clark enjoying the chemistry he has with her, leading to the two almost sharing a short kiss. As Lois turns on the lights, she suddenly feels the effect of the subliminator working, and they realize Tempest's new plan. Alt Clark uses his powers to start to track down where Tempest is hiding and holding Wells, but in the meantime, Wells has escaped to his time machine. Tempest gets the jump on him, and together they travel to Lois's apartment, kidnapping her and taking her back to Tempest's lair, where he has again used his mind control machine to get the nuclear launch codes from President Garner. As he launches an all-out strike against the world, Alt Superman shows up and destroys the signaling computer computer and apprehends Tempest. One of Tempest's henchmen, wishing for a lighter sentence, gives Lois Tempest's watch, which broke at the exact moment the time window exploded, allowing Wells and Lois to know the exact second Superman disappeared and enabling them to find him in the time stream. At a press conference the next day, Alt-Superman explains the mind control used to fool them, and Tempest attempts to expose Superman's secret identity, but with Clark back in town, it's easy to disprove as the police return Tempest to prison.
Oh, this is unforgivable.
I'm so sorry.
Just shameful.
I'm really sorry.
No, not you, me. I almost kissed you. How could I almost kiss you?
No, I almost kissed you.
No, I almost kissed you.
No, believe me,
okay, fine. We almost kissed us. Look, Clark, other Clark. I'm in a really weird place right now. I miss my husband, whom you look exactly like, and it wouldn't take a lot of imagination to pretend that you were him, but you're not him, and I love him, and you have to understand that.
Yes, understood completely. But Lois, see, my life is that lonely thing that I talked about, and then there's this weird chemistry between you and I that I don't really understand, but I promise you it will never, ever, ever, ever happen again.
Alright, so we were a bit light on the investigation in last week's episode. I guess we're making up for it now.
Yeah, holy cow. Apparently, iReactions found a lot of stuff that was different between the script and screen. So I kind of picked and chose a little bit here. So here's what we got. Garner actually says to Tempest, well, the U.S. doesn't have emperors. And Tempest says, well, a man can dream, at least under current law. So a little more with Tempest here. He also says to what's his name, the henchman.
That guy.
Yeah, I can't remember his name now. He says to the henchman, he says, "I'm giving you carte blanche to shoot anyone who doesn't like me." You know, and then Garner says, "But everyone likes you, Mr. Doe." You know, adds that in there. We know that. After Tempest kills the Secret Service agent, again, it's an extra line. He looks at Garner and says, so, let's write some laws. And when no one can so much as scratch without asking me first, I'll buy you a beer. There's a lot more in both of these episodes where there was a lot more dialogue that just sort of cut out. And it felt like the script that we had maybe was like more of a first draft or a second draft rather than something that was close to shooting, because there was so much that was cut out.
Yeah, well, maybe they didn't want to go like too over the top with Tempest, because he gets a lot of one-liners in there, so maybe
he does
trim it down a little bit.
Now, there's an extra Daily Planet scene where Lois asks Jimmy to find out which congressmen are voting for moving up the inauguration. And then Jimmy protests and says, well, that sounds like snooping. You know, there's going to be a new anti-treason law to make investigating John Doe illegal. And Lois says, well, that's unconstitutional. And Jimmy says, well, John Doe thinks the Constitution is old-fashioned, which, you know, it's actually a nice little scene, you know. Nice little scene there, so it's too bad they had to cut that out. Probably that one, I imagine, just for time. During the interview with Tempest, Lois and Tempest are like, you know, going against each other, and he says, well, I guess we both laid our cards on the table. You got a losing hand there, Lois. Why don't you fold, and maybe I can get you a job in the new administration? Which, I guess, yeah, I can imagine him doing that, just sort of to torture her more,
yeah.
You know, having to work there. Oh, Dragon was the guy's name. Dragon was the henchman's name, that's right. Because Tempest has another line to him. When he's giving his speech, you know, he says, can I have a moment of your time? And then he says to Dragon, like I have to ask, I own these people. And then during his speech, he also says, you know, so that I can more quickly assume my role, our beloved ex-president Garner has moved up Inauguration Day to tomorrow. Which I don't know if the president can actually do that. So I guess that's why they had the earlier scene there where, she said the congressmen were voting to move it up. There's an extra scene where Wells, tied up, is making small talk with Dragon. And he says, like, so, Mr. Dragon, did you want to be Secretary of State when you were little? If you were ever little? And Dragon says, not really. Plus, it's harder than I thought it'd be. Which, you know... Of course. I could see Wells saying something like that, but it's not exactly the best reply from Dragon, you know? Like, you'd expect something funnier, you know?
I know. He doesn't really talk about being Secretary of State until, like, right at the end.
Exactly. There was extra exposition of Tempest's plan when Tempest asks Dragon and Wells, you know, he comes in, he basically says, is no one eager to ask why I'm glowing? And Dragon's like, why are you glowing? And Tempest says, because I've attained success. The subliminator's microwave transmission has been fed into ordinary electrical wiring, which acts as an antenna. So just, like he basically says that already, but just a different way of doing it, I guess. Extra dialogue was there also when Garner enters the scene and tells John Doe that he's actually stolen the nuclear launch codes for Tempest, and he's like, the idea came to me when I flicked on the light switch. It's a little heavy-handed, that dialogue, right there. It's like really hammering it home that it came through, with the light switch. So that's why I think, it feels like this was just like they hadn't quite figured out how to get it through to people that he was using the power lines, like he says it, and we see Lois do it later on, which I think worked really well. So I think maybe this was like an earlier version or something. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll talk about what the alt clock does to display that later.
Right. Let's see. After the former president gives Tempest the nuclear launch codes, Tempest gives the President Garner a piece of candy. And that's why in the scene, it looks like Garner is chewing on something. And we don't really know why. It's because they cut that part out. It's so funny. There's a scene, and this is a awkward scene, like just reading about it, where Alt Clark is on the couch with Lois, and he's shirtless because I guess he's at home. So he's just doesn't have a shirt on. And Lois has to awkwardly ask him to put his shirt on. I was like, glad they cut that, because that's a little weird. It's a little weird.
You just imagine Lois being like, so you want to go ahead and put a shirt on there?
Exactly. He has a little moment with Mrs. Kent, with Martha, where he says, that was nice when you called me honey, because he doesn't have parents in his world. That would have been neat to see a little bit more with them. There was also, finally, this thing with the news anchor on the TV. There's a little more with him, and it was all about the launching the nuclear codes, and basically, he says, while overseas leaders question what may have provoked such an unprecedented show of force, polls here in the United States reflect nothing but support. While some assume retaliation is inevitable and anticipate an immediate counterattack, President Doe said there's absolutely no proof of that, and a show of force is very much in America's best interest. This feels like real life. In this morning's radio address, President Doe suggested no one panic unnecessarily, and added that every American citizen can be proud that the United States has once again taken its place as a nation. And these are his words: a nation not only carries a big stick, but knows how to beat the hell out of people with it. So that was all from the from the TV news reporter, which is kind of funny. Yeah. Yep.
There it is.
Just seems so realistic these days.
Sure, people back in '97 weren't saying as much.
No. They had no idea what was going to come.
Yeah.
So John Doe was a myth created by Tempest, an escaped criminal, and planted in your brains by a sophisticated method of brainwashing. He'll return now to prison, where he'll do no further damage.
Any last words, Tempest? Why, yes. Glad you asked. Time you chowderheads all got let in on a little secret. This Superman of yours, this chiseled god, is in reality Clark Kent of the Daily Planet. And chess. This is where I'd say check.
Honey, I think the media would like us to comment on Mr. Tempest's last remark.
We regret that Mr. Tempest's mental health has not improved. He's obviously still delusional.
This is where I would say checkmate.
No, you cretin! He is Clark Kent! One of them from another dimension! I mean, it's obvious! Duh!
Alright, so getting into the main story. And the lead, making Metropolis great again.
Yes. Oh, it's his words. His words.
Yep. Not pointing fingers at anybody.
Exactly.
Alright, so we're getting the wrap up to last week's episode. We start with former President Garner coming into the room. Superman has just disappeared, right where we left off. And he doesn't really want to listen to what Lois is saying. She's, saying Tempest is a bad guy. He's destroyed Superman. And you kind of see how the brainwashing has really taken effect over everyone.
Oh, yeah.
And we start to deal with what's life going to be like without Superman.
Mm-hmm.
And, we get a few of our side characters come into it, namely Martha and Jonathan. And this was actually pretty cool, because Lois sort of says, well, John Doe is Tempest, and he kind of destroyed Superman. And we get how brainwashed they are, even.
It widens it, it widens the scope of what he's doing. Because at this point, it's just, people who are involved directly right there in Metropolis in the story.
They're going to come around a bit, but they're still pretty taken with John Doe, even though they know that he's killed, as far as they know, killed their son. He's pushing to get the inauguration brought forward so he can officially become president. So Tempest is still worried about the small percentage of holdouts, and he hires this guy Dragon. I don't know, it's the weirdest thing that comes back later. The first thing he does is he hands Dragon a pile of clothes and says, hey, get these cleaned, I ruined them.
Right. Yeah.
Destroying the portal or whatever it was.
Yes.
And I don't know. When it came back later, were you surprised by this?
I hadn't actually even paid attention to that part. I didn't even notice the clothes thing. I was wondering later, where'd the watch come from? But yeah, it makes sense that they just planted that in there right there.
Yeah, it is just a little throwaway thing, but we'll talk about how we feel about the wrap-up, I guess, at the end.
Okay.
But H.G. Wells finally shows up to see what the hell's going on.
But not our favorite H.G. Wells.
No, it's old Wells.
Which I wonder, I assume originally that maybe they got old Wells because they couldn't get Terry Kaiser for that particular episode. And then maybe for this one, they just decided, well, we used old Wells before. We could save money by just using them again.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's why they did it. I don't know. I like the other Wells, younger Wells.
Yeah. But still at the same time, it's kind of nice to have that continuity of actor.
Oh, it is, yeah.
Even though the character is being played by two actors in two separate storylines now.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I still kind of felt that sense of continuity.
Yeah, it's nice.
And he's there to give hope, right?
Yes, exactly.
To say, Superman's probably not destroyed. He's just trapped in this nanosecond of time.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe using the time machine, we could pull him out. But we need to find the exact time that portal was closed. And that's going to be the overarching mystery of this episode.
Yeah. How
can they find the exact time that he disappeared? And they put an arbitrary 2-day, 48 hours before it diminishes timeline on it. So I don't know where he comes up with that, but he throws that out there.
Exactly.
Lois gets sent to interview Tempest by Perry.
Yeah.
And of course, he has decided he's not going to bother trying to kill her. He wants to watch her suffer. So, typical bad guy mistake, right? Give her time to work out how to stop him.
He has some good one-liners in here, but they're not as good as previous episodes.
No.
In the previous episodes, he does say a lot more to break the fourth wall. In this one, he does a lot less of that. It's not really there.
Yeah, I agree. And the plan does start to come together, Since she's not dead, she can work with Tempest, who I guess comes up with like a Band-Aid for the problem until he can figure out how to save Superman. And that is to bring back our favorite Alt Clark.
Yes.
Now, how do you think this is as an idea to bring the Alt Clark that we saw from the parallel universe over?
I thought it was cool. I'm glad. I was glad. I love multi-universe type things, multi-dimensions. That's why we love sliders, Mm-hmm. So it was cool. There wasn't really, as iReactions had said in his email to me, he said there's not really much difference, though, between that Clark and our Clark. They're almost practically the same. And this actually comes up in the back issues as well, about how really there should be some more differences, since he grew up hiding his powers, so he has a slightly different personality. And now that he's outed in the other universe, he's had a year where he doesn't really live so much as Clark, I guess, because he's Superman, basically everyone knows who Clark is, and that he actually has the power. So they felt there should be a little more difference in the way that he was portrayed, and I can see that. I can agree with that. So it was good to see him, but yeah, it was kind of like still our Clark.
They do try here and there to really point out that this Clark is like very different to our Clark, but I wish there was more of it.
Exactly, because that's the whole thing about the multiple dimensions. When you see a character that you're familiar with, when you see them doing something that's like, well, that's different. It's like, especially like if you're watching Flash and when they visit, like Earth 2 or other Earth, and you see these other characters that look like your character, but they're so different. It's like, it's fun to see those, or the Tom Cavanaugh who plays Wells, in Flash. He's played like 3 or 4 different Wells now, and it's fun to see him like really stretch and make each Wells distinct. It's nice to see that. So it'd be nice to see that with this episode too. It would have been nice to see a little more difference in Clark.
Or on the other hand, you might just get Jerry O'Connell putting on a bad British accent.
Yes, you might. That's true.
But I did like the scenes with the old Clark, and of course Martha and Jonathan see him and his, they could have gone a little bit deeper in his seeing them. It was a little bit awkward and stilted, maybe. I think maybe he could have shown a little bit more emotion behind seeing these parents of his that died when he was young.
I guess that's why I was thinking, like, this would have been great for a 3-parter to wrap up the Tempest thing, but maybe explore further, like somehow get them over there or, like finish the Tempest line, because we don't want to stretch that out unnecessarily. So we still could have had another good continuation of this, maybe with a different villain or a different problem, something with, the alt Clark and, the parents here and everything. I don't know. There had to have been something else that we could have done to stretch that out a little more. And then we could have gotten more of that interaction, which I think would have been neat,
Yeah. And then the relationship between the alternate Clark and Lois.
Right. Yeah.
Is sort of just broken down into one scene where he's in the apartment and they're sort of thinking and they almost kiss but don't.
Yeah.
And she feels conflicted by her feelings. And you don't quite know what he's thinking because obviously she doesn't want it. But like maybe he does want it, maybe?
Right. I think he does.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
But because it's just broken down into that one scene, you're like, it's hard to get a grip on it. It's like you said, they're too busy with the Tempest storyline, so it all kind of gets the little bit of a short shrift there because we go back to Tempest. And honestly, it takes Lois and the alternate Clark forever to piece together that he's using the phone lines to brainwash people. He even unveils a new bill called the non-phone bill, where it is illegal not to use the phone.
Exactly.
And they're like, you think maybe it has something to do with the phone lines?
Maybe. Let's investigate further.
If I can quote Tempest for a moment. Well, duh.
Yep.
But of course they're too late in this realization because Tempest has a big plan to unveil. He calls it Tempest Think.
Yes.
And it's the exact same plan as his last plan, except instead of using the phones, it's using electricity. To me, his big plan unveil was a little lacking.
Well, yeah, and the name is a little weird. Tempest Think.
Yeah, I know. It was just like, he's like, I planned for them to figure out what my big plan was. So my even bigger plan was to do the same thing, just a little bit differently.
It was a funny scene with Wells, though. It was, well, while you were anticipating, I was anticipating your anticipation and came up with it. That was good. I see, in there could have been like a good thing, like, well, like a good bad guy does, I was anticipating your anticipation in order to further the plot along, Something like that could have been cool, but a little funny line, breaking the wall again.
There is actually for the Doctor Who fans out there, back in the 80s, they did like a comic relief, and it was Rowan Atkinson playing Doctor Who in this sketch.
Oh, yeah, I saw like that on YouTube. I didn't watch it, but I saw like the still of it. I was like, what's that? And I figured, well, I'll get to that eventually.
Yeah, it's pretty much a scene where he's facing off against the Master, and they're in an Aztec temple, and they have this whole back and forth where he says, the Master's like, I've got you now, Doctor. See the wall of inevitable destruction, and the wall turns around and captures him. But then it turns back around, And he goes, no, it's actually the couch of reasonable comfort. And he's sitting in this couch. While you went back in time and bribed the architect, I went back after you were there, and I also bribed the architect, and now the wall is my trap, and ha ha ha.
Right.
You know, it kind of reminded me of that.
Yeah, that's cool. I'll have to watch that now. For everyone who didn't know, I'm just getting into Doctor Who after all these years.
I know. I talked it up enough. Took you long enough.
I know.
So, yeah, and like we were saying, there's this odd thing that the alt Clark does where he uses his shaking hand as like a receiver of some kind to get the signal.
Right. Yeah. The way I originally figured it, I was like, he's interrupting the signal with his hand, you know? But then I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense because it goes through the electrical wiring. So it wouldn't be going through the air. So how does that work? So yeah, I guess that's what he's doing. Like he's you know, making his hand an antenna for the power, I guess. I don't know.
And just when he started shimmering too, it just made me think of the Flash.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly.
Because that's what I thought he was going to, like, you know, shimmer into the wall or something.
Yeah, I mean, the effect was well done.
Yeah, it looked fine, but I don't know, it's just a weird use of power.
Yeah, it is.
And it's that thing of, like, being an alt Clark as well, you know, so he's kind of, you know, figured out a different way to use his powers that maybe our Clark wouldn't have thought of.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing, like, we could have explored, you know, like, maybe he's discovered different uses, you know, for his powers that our Clark never thought of, you know? So that would have been neat to have explored. You know, just like referencing the Flash again, you know, how we have people crossing over and people from one universe use their powers differently than the people from the other universe because they haven't figured it out yet, you know, like, oh, I can do that? Wow, how do I do that? You know, show me. So yeah, that would have been neat too. It's just, again, to stretch it out, make another chapter where they went to that universe and saw how he acts as Superman, you know, in that world.
And, you know, it's interesting you were saying before, you know, maybe we could have explored something with, you know, taking Martha and Jonathan to the alt universe and doing stuff like that. I mean,
it would have been neat to see in that world, like, it could have been this whole thing where we could have had John Shea back as Lex Luthor. In that dimension, and maybe he finds out about the alternate dimension and, you know, kidnaps Martha and Jonathan back there, and then they have to go and save him. See? That would have been great. That would have been perfect.
But as it stands, we kind of just get Tempest say, oh, well, you know, Lois and Clark and Superman, they're on to me here. So how about I trap them here and I'll go and rule in the other universe, which now doesn't have its Superman.
Exactly.
You know, the possibility was there to cross over. You need to do the multi-dimensional thing, you know, across the episodes.
I know. Man, that would have been awesome to see Lex Luthor in the other universe, like, different, you know, like how it would have been different. Like, oh, the possibilities. Oh, they missed it. They missed this possibility. It would have been so good. Because I'm just thinking, you know, especially watching The Flash lately, it's got me in the mood for this alternate universe. Like, come on, you know, let's see the difference. Because John Shea could have pulled that off. He definitely would have pulled that off.
Yeah, it definitely would have been interesting. But instead, we kind of just get this typical climax. You know, they know his plan. They destroy the Subliminator. Tempest is going to use the nuclear launch codes to destroy the world. And they pretty much just stop him.
Yep.
Did you also notice they used the old half-recorded the answering machine message trick again?
Oh, yeah.
They did a few episodes back. The novelty of answering machines in the mid-90s.
Can't do that anymore. I know. And never mind, you know, like when cell phones first started to come out, you know, and like people didn't quite understand how voicemail like actually worked. I remember my mother would call, you know, and I would get voicemails that were like, Tom, are you there? Pick up. It's just Mom. Are you there? Can you pick up? No? Well, okay, I'll call you back. Are you there? Okay. You know, I'm sure a lot of people got that, you know, that type of message because they didn't understand. It's like, well, we can't hear it. It's just, it's going directly to voicemail. So,
that's hilarious.
Yeah.
And they even do the whole countdown to 1. At the very last second, they stop the launch. Very cliched.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Destroy the box. All right, everything's safe.
Mind control wears off. Everybody suddenly realizes, what the hell are we doing?
Exactly. We just launched nuclear weapons at the world? Yes, we did. Almost.
And to avoid a lengthy jail term, or maybe to get some sort of lenience, Dragon turns over those dirty clothes,
Yes.
which include Tempest's watch that also stopped at the moment he touched the time window thing.
Right.
And hence they have an exact spot that they can aim for to go and get Superman back. Like, what if his watch was slow?
Exactly. Yeah. What if his watch was slow? Yeah, that's true. That is true.
I mean, they had to think of something, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think it would have been nice if at the end we could have seen Andrus come back, for Tempest, just to reassure that the world was perfect. Back to normal like it was before.
They take the opportunity to have Superman and Clark be in the same place at the same time as well.
Well, yeah.
So,
Because, it's the perfect time to do it,
Yeah. If
Get
you
rid
got
of
two.
any suspicion.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It does give Tempest the opportunity to give his "da" line. He has to give the old "da."
It was pretty funny, too, because he's just like, you could tell he's panicking as they're taking him away. He's like, well, da!
I know. No matter how many times he says it, it's still a funny line.
It is. It is.
And we end with a little bit of hope, as Wells implies that maybe they could go and find the Lois, the alternate
Right.
Lois from the other
Exactly.
universe, who just disappeared in the Congo.
Couldn't be too hard a thing, Maybe he's worried about going back in time, and changing history, because if they go back in time to stop her from actually disappearing in the Congo, whatever happens, then that changes the present for him, where he meets our Lois. That would negate that whole storyline or something. So, maybe they would try to use the time machine to hone in on her soul, or like they did for the Soulmates episode.
Oh, right, yeah. Yeah, I don't quite understand the plan there, but he kind of just implies that maybe she's still there, and maybe we could find her.
It could have been a whole thing with Lex Luthor. Clark finally meets his Lois in the alt universe, and then Lex Luthor is also there, and he finally meets her, and he becomes enthralled with her, and it could have been a whole nother storyline, in that world.
Well, yeah, exactly. They could have just set that up and gone, oh no.
If I was a writer, I'd be fan fiction writing right now.
Ugh,
Type it away.
I tell ya.
Badly.
Jeez. But all in all, still pretty reasonable wrap up to an interesting storyline.
Well, yeah, and it's like we said, it's Tempest and Wells again, and they're always great. Always, even with Soulmates, as much of a problem that we had with it, it was still good. It's good to see Tempest and Wells. I like those two.
Always good story. Great villain. And definitely a worthy villain, outside of Lex Luthor. I mean, we've probably had Tempest and Wells the most.
Yeah.
So, good value. All right, a few bylines. I have to ask, what did the alternate Clark do to pop the cork on that bottle?
Right. With the sound effects that they used, there was like a weird sound effect they used. I thought maybe he was like using his strength on the bottle, sort of like compress it a little bit, but not enough to break it.
But it's glass.
But, like maybe there is like a certain point where you can just a little bit before it breaks, There is a breaking point, So I think he was just very carefully doing that, maybe vibration would have been better to have shown, because that makes a little more sense. But yeah, I thought maybe he was squeezing just a little bit, maybe, just to, compress the glass just a little bit more.
I don't know, just made me think of that telepathic pick the lock thing from when he broke Lois out of prison that time. And I was like,
right.
What?
How does he do that?
What
Exactly.
was that?
Yep.
We talked about, how they made the old Clark seem different in several ways, but didn't quite explore it, It was just, the small things, they bring up the spin thing.
Yes.
Spinning in and out of the costume, which I thought was funny, just that he goes into this cupboard and then immediately comes back out.
Yeah, that was weird when he goes into the cupboard. Yeah, that was a little strange. Like, what's he doing? Oh, okay. He just came out of the closet. Okay.
But yeah, for the most part, I thought it was a bit heavy-handed, just trying to make him seem different. I need to ask, what the hell was this, Dixie Chicks song or whatever it was that Lois's dream is scored to?
All right, let me explain this. Whenever a song comes up, in Lois and Clark, I've been using SoundHound. There's an app called Shazam, which does the same thing. Mm-hmm. It listens to the music's playing and tries to identify it. And it could not identify it. And I tried it a couple times. I tried it a couple different times in the song and everything. I'm like, what is this? So then, what you can do if you didn't know, you can go ahead and type in to Google whatever lyrics you hear. And
Right.
Google is pretty good at
Find the
bringing
chorus
up.
or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty good at that. That didn't even work. I'm like, what the heck? Like, it's not finding anything. I'm like, all right, well. And then I started thinking, a couple years ago, I was watching this movie, and I don't even remember what movie it was. And it was just like this person singing, this woman singing. And I was like, oh, it's kind of a nice little tune and everything. But it was a song written by this guy who writes songs when movies and TV shows need songs that sound like they belong, like, in that movie, like they're from, like we need a power ballad, you know? So
we've come across this before in the show, haven't we?
I think so. So I thought, oh, well, that must be what it is. It's just someone who, wrote a song because they said, oh, we need a song that sounds like this typical type of song for this situation.
Yeah, Dixie Chick song, pretty much.
Right. And so I was like, oh, well, that must be what it is. While I was trying to find, that those lyrics and everything, I came upon a page, and it's such an old web page, like in the days of like GeoCities and whatnot, where it's just like, all text, and it's like you have to scroll forever to read everything. But it's a page that has songs from Lois and Clark, like the songs that they use, they put on here, the lyrics and everything. So there's the Eric Clapton one is on here, and then there's Holding Out for a Hero, and they listed them on here with the lyrics and everything. And one of them is this little thing called Simple Truth. And it was written by Jay Gruska, who does the music for Lois and Clark. And it was performed by someone named Celeste Prince, and it was featured in this episode, of course. And they put the lyrics on there, and it's just like one stanza, so there's no real chorus, there's no real bridge or anything. It's just what they came up with to fit that situation. Jay Gruska needed a song and decided, well, I'll write the words specifically, so that it highlights what we want them to feel in this song. So it's basically what I was saying. It's just like a song written pretty much for that situation, and then performed by Celeste Prince, who is still a performer, I guess, in her own right. She still performs and writes music. I saw her Facebook page and everything, but nothing like that's like, taking over the world or anything like that. Just, little stuff here and there.
Well, way to go, Celeste. Nice one.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just a short song. There's no like real hook or anything, but it fits, it fits the piece.
It makes me think of, did you ever see Basketball?
Yes.
Trey Parker and Matt Stone, yeah. And there's that whole part, like once all his friends have turned on him, and he's just sitting in the car driving, and suddenly the song comes on, and it pretty much starts explaining like the exact scenario that he's in. Like, your friends have left you, and there's a truck ahead, and it's changing lanes, so be careful.
That's funny. God, it's been so long since I saw that episode or that movie. I'm gonna have to watch it again. Nice.
All right. Well, that's cool. Nice investigating. Well done.
Yeah. What can I say? I got a little Lois and Clark in me. I dug deep.
Lastly, Jimmy and his women. There's a throwaway line where he says he's going to go on a date with some chick that just got out of prison, quote unquote.
I know. I don't know. That to me, that screams desperate. Like you're going after criminals, ex-criminals now. Okay.
He's going after the president's daughter in the last episode.
Yeah.
Far
What a
out.
change. What a change.
Oh, Jimmy, what did we do with you? Shall we get into this week's quote vote?
Yes, a blast from the past here.
What's everybody standing around for? This a newspaper, not happy hour at Buckingham Palace. What are we here, the Daily Planet, or second stringers from the Weehawken Gazette? Am I making myself perfectly clear?
Yes, so I thought, with the parallel universe theme, why not?
We haven't thought about Professor Arturo in the longest time.
But we have a clear winner this week, plenty of votes, so cue the music.
Professor Arturo walks out of a cupboard and sees Vincent Price. Oh, that's right. I forgot. I'm playing Professor Arturo.
You're Arturo.
I forgot all about that. All right. I'm like, boy, he's gonna do both parts. I'm like, oh yeah, wait, I'm Professor Arturo. I do the impression. That's right. Okay. All right. I was like, I get to relax this episode. I'm like, wait, why isn't he saying anything? Oh, it's my turn. Okay.
Oh, you fool.
Yeah, you gotta leave that in. All right. What?
Nothing. I mean, you don't, spin in and out of the suit.
Spin? I've never tried that. Is that what he does?
Yes.
Well, maybe I'll give it a shot sometime.
Oh, no. That's okay. I mean, it's a fine way to change. It's not him. I mean, you're not him. I have to remind myself sometimes.
Vincent picks up a plate. Twinkies, cupcakes, and ding-dongs?
Where's my brain? I just thought.
That's just because he likes those things, then so would I. Yay.
I was really looking forward to seeing how... Oh, insane. I was looking forward to hearing how Professor Arturo would yell yay.
Exactly. It's been so long since I played him.
I was thinking about it. I was like, nah, I'm going to bust out the Arturo for this one.
Yes, it's good.
All right. Well, let's get into the second episode discussion. The episode is titled AKA Superman, written by Jeff Vlaming and directed by Robert Ginty. This originally aired on March 16th of 1997.
James Olsen?
Jimmy. Just Jimmy.
I thought you'd be taller.
I can be taller.
Right. Boots. You want to get a table?
Yeah, table would be good. Table, please.
So when exactly did you start working at the Daily Planet?
A little over 4 years ago, I started as an office grunt, moved my way up to photo assistant. Of course, over the years, I've worked my way up the ranks, so now I'm a junior assistant city editor.
Uh-huh. You and Lois Lane, you get along?
Oh, yeah, Lois and I were total buds.
And Superman?
What about him?
You and he, close?
Oh, like this.
At least.
Well, I mean...
And what about other relationships? I imagine in your line of work, it's tough to maintain a romance.
Romance? It's funny you bring that up, because this last year alone, there's been a lot. I mean, not a lot. Several is the wrong word. It's just that in my line of work, my schedule is so unpredictable that most women, my social life's in the pits, to be honest.
Jimmy finds himself the target of the advances of a young lady named Penny, who has foregone a social life for years while in search of the true identity of the only man for her, Superman, who she believes lives a normal life as the young photographer. Jimmy is at first confused, but not wanting to give up the beautiful girl, lets her believe that he is indeed the Man of Steel and their romance blossoms. Meanwhile, Lois and Clark are investigating the disappearance of an astronaut just days before a shuttle launch. While it is explained as just a routine mission, a forensic report identifies ashes left behind at the astronaut's home as the astronaut himself, turning the disappearance into an apparent murder. Clark digs into the matter and learns of a satellite that was due to be dismantled during the shuttle's mission, a satellite that was originally placed to be part of an advanced destructive weapon system but never was completed. Elsewhere in the city, Penny's boss, the man who actually used the missing part of the satellite to murder the astronaut after he refused to take the part up with him and put it into the satellite, is trying to find another astronaut to be on his payroll and finish the job for him. His henchman witnesses Penny kissing a confused Superman after calling him honey and decides that she will be the leverage they need to get Superman to take the weapon to space and fix the satellite, mistakenly believing that Penny is dating Superman. Penny is then kidnapped along with Lois, who is at Penny's work, investigating it as a lead for her story. Penny tells Lois that she called Superman, calling Jimmy's phone of course, and he shows up and faces off the henchman in a fight, while the real Superman confronts Penny's boss on the roof, who blackmails him into placing the weapon in space. Superman, however, turns the tables by aiming the weapon at the Earthbound control module and destroys it, saving the day, and revealing that Jimmy couldn't possibly be Superman as they stand side by side. Penny, at first angry that Jimmy lied, decides that he's just a nice normal guy and lays a big old kiss on him, ensuring that she'll be his girlfriend for at least the next 60 seconds until the episode ends, after which we will never hear from her again.
I work here. I'm not really a university student, Jimmy.
You're not? Then why?
Soundproofing. Just in case.
Are we gonna be making a lot of noise?
The walls have ears. I know how important it is to you that no one finds out.
Well, actually, what?
I mean, look at all the trouble you've gone to. It's brilliant. brilliant, frankly. With better secret identity than some newspaper schmo. Who would ever guess that nobody office grunt Jimmy Olsen was really... Superman.
Wait a minute, you think I... Okay.
All that searching, all that waiting, all those times I said no. It was worth it.
Penny, I probably heard you wrong, but, you seem to think I'm Superman.
It took me 2 years, several thousand bytes of information, Didacom's state-of-the-art computer system. But I did it. You were a 97% match.
Penny, really? 97%?
And even then I wasn't sure. Until yesterday. When you turned into... him. But don't worry. I won't tell anyone. Your secret's safe with me.
It is?
Yes.
Penny...
What's it like to be you? So brave, so fearless, so... lonely.
It's hell.
Oh, Superman.
All right, so plenty to investigate here as well.
I don't know, this much, like, that's changed. It's just, like, it makes me think that these are just early drafts, or they just didn't have a clear direction for the storyline, which worries me. You know, it worries me when there's this much change, that they're just not sure of what they're doing with the whole, like, what the focus of the story is.
Right.
You know? Anyway, getting into it, iReactions noted here, and I thought this was interesting because I did not know this, that Penny, the girl who plays Penny, was actually Justin Whalen's real life girlfriend at this point.
Oh.
So they were actually in a relationship already. So it's kind of neat, you know, thinking now about the episode and them acting together. They sort of had to pretend they didn't really know each other. But apparently she actually dumps Justin Whalen for Michelle Rodriguez. Yeah, later on.
This isn't that one that, like, Michelle Rodriguez got in all that strife over, right? Wasn't she, like,
it?
she was, like, beating a girlfriend or something? Some sort of, like...
I have no idea. I don't know. I never followed her that much, so I didn't know.
I just remember some sort of domestic disturbance case that was up
Right.
against her with her and her girlfriend at some point.
I guess it could be. Could be. When Perry says that Jimmy probably won't have a date for the party, you know, he's like, probably not. That wasn't in the script, so that was just thrown in there, probably by Lane Smith at the very end. And then, let's see, Didacom, the company, the establishing shot was supposed to be at night. And this, in the script, it was during the daytime. The name is on the building and everything, so slight change there. Doris, you know, Penny's coworker, actually in the script asks her to go to a nightclub, and Penny declines. And Doris says, you know, you're so beautiful and smart, and you bowl a 280. You know, let's go. And it's like, okay, bowls a 280. I guess that's a good dating point. I guess. Wow. Penny explains the computer a little more about how it just takes over and digests the information, and arrives at the most likely result. We get that. We get how computers work. Perry grumbles about how in a computer age, dry cleaners still lose shirts. And then he says, you know, is there any other good dates for a surprise party? You know, just furthering that second storyline that we have going on, the B, you know, and it's like, it's not really needed, you know. Yeah. There was a scene where the henchman, now this was interesting. This is a whole different subplot here with the henchman, which I'll tell you right now, I don't remember the henchmen's names. I don't remember the boss's name at all. So I just keep calling him Penny's boss and the henchman. That's all. So for whatever reason, they just, you know. Anyway, the henchman actually in one scene asks Penny out on a date, and she declines. And he says, well, you know, you'll change your mind soon, you know. And she says, not unless you're Superman, you know. And then the henchman goes in, talks to the boss, and the boss, you know, chastises him for wasting time flirting, you know, with just, you know, with some girl. So there was this subplot here, and it comes back later on because he asks her out again, and she declines. And it was like another running thing that was going on there between Penny and the henchman. Jimmy being so nervous in the whole thing wasn't specified in the script. It's just something that Justin Whalen added, in his performance, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
Shows, he's got some chops there. There was, when they were at lunch at that outdoor cafe, I guess in the script it said men were supposed to walk by the table and look at Penny like, oh wow, look at her. And then they were supposed to look jealous of Jimmy, which I understand what they were going for, but that's kind of hard to portray, in a scene, I imagine. And it's like, that's not the biggest, that's not the most important thing in that scene. So
yeah, he's like the big brother in an 80s movie. Like, get out of here, butthead.
Exactly.
What are you doing with this nerd?
Exactly. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm glad they took that out. Penny asks about Jimmy's relationship with Clark Kent as well, because she's asking about how close, he is to Lois and all that. And, he says, oh yeah, Clark, we're good friends. And Clark's pretty good friends with Superman as well. So just some extra lines there they cut out. Now iReactions notes here about the comic books that, they explain how come in the comics Jimmy never gets promoted. At least in this one series, there was a series called Superman Metropolis. And it explains in there that Jimmy has ADD, attention deficit disorder. And so in that series, Perry doesn't trust him to do anything more than take photos, which is why he's always a photographer and never sort of climbs up the ladder. Because we are always, Jimmy's been there for a while and he has this great sense for investigation, his nose for news, but he doesn't get promoted ever. So why? And this was the comics way of sort of explaining why he's been a photographer for, 40 some years. I never really cared. It didn't matter to me. In the aired episode, Penny kisses Jimmy and leaves, but in the script, her beeper was supposed to go off, calling her away from the lunch date.
Right.
Let's see. Clark explains why he has 2 agenda books, and he just says, I like to keep them separate. It kind of helps my mind, so it's interesting. It started showing, they are 2 different, people. Really, Superman's a whole different person than Clark himself. And there's an extra scene of, like I said earlier, of Penny at her office. And it's, the henchman, I guess his name is Peters, was hitting on her again, and Penny brushes him off and just starts talking to Doris about how excited she is to date Superman. So she's already spreading, who Superman is to her coworkers. Like, this would not be a good girlfriend. This is not Lois, who keep a secret.
She spent so many years, striving for this. You think she would have prepared.
Exactly.
Keep the secret.
I know. You can't reveal things like that, honey. Come on. The whole thing where Clark is answering his mail and there's the underwear in there and everything. And then also with Penny putting on lipstick and calling for Superman reminded iReactions of that Superman Metropolis series again, because there's a scene where Jimmy and Superman are actually hanging out at Jimmy's apartment and they're watching TV together. And it's like, yeah, they're watching TV and eating chips. And Superman confesses to Jimmy that, an aggravating amount of his time is spent rescuing naked women who jump off buildings to attract Superman's attention. It's like, whoa. Which I think people would do that. I think people would, in fact, probably do that.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, exactly. Especially in today's day and age, let's get this on YouTube, let's get it up there.
Get naked and jump off the building.
Exactly. It'd be like a whole, hashtag naked Superman, something like that. Anyway, so there was extra dialogue where Penny asks Jimmy how he fills out the suit. And Jimmy says, I do a lot of push-ups. Okay. Yeah. When Clark identifies Penny, as the girl that kissed him, he's like, I'm sure it's nothing personal. And Lois just rages, gets how she gets, nothing personal. She lures my husband out of the house in the middle of the night like some sidewalk siren. And you're telling me it's nothing personal? I don't trust her, Clark. I'm going to find out what she's up to. So a typical Lois line, Lois was supposed to use a cell phone to call the police in the script, not the landline. But then how would the henchman come up and, or the boss come up and turn the phone off if she was using the cell phone. Right. There was a line from Lois when they're tied together, her and Penny, and she says, come on, if those Cirque du Soleil people can balance on 26 chairs while baking a pie, we should be able to get to our feet. Which is true. I actually like that line better than I like the little song that she sang. That was ridiculous. Yeah. Anyway, Dean Cain was given his line about how really 87% match You know, in the script it just says 87% match, really, like all is one line. But in the aired version, he pauses after 87% match, which gives Jimmy a chance to get in like, oh yeah, you know, and then Dean goes, really, you know, and iReaction's noted that this shows how, you know, what kind of person Dean is, you know, whereas a lot of actors sort of, you know, stomp on other people's lines. Like he noted Adam West on the Batman 60s show was always stepping on Burt Ward's lines, you know, like cutting them off and things like that. Dean's a nice enough guy that he's like, well, let's, you know, leave a little space here. Let's get some more interaction going on.
Yeah,
which
let's work together on this.
Yeah, it's a good point. You know, and that goes for Star Trek too. Like, you know, Kirk, you know, William Shatner was always stepping on people's lines from what I understand, reading about him, you know, like taking lines from other people and whatnot. So it's nice to see. Nice to see. The singing bunny hop that Lois does was not in the script, which doesn't surprise me because it was dumb. Lois, at the end, when Jimmy and Penny are kissing, Lois is like, how about that kiss she gave him? And Clark says, kiss? I thought she was going to inhale his head. I was like, all right. And then when Penny orders in, I guess it was Mandarin Chinese, she actually is, you know, speaking really good Chinese. It's in the script, written out phonetically. And iReaction said his father said she has great dialect, but he questions the lack of rice in the order. There was, I guess, no rice in the order. So there you go.
That's funny. Nice one.
Hi, Jimmy.
Hi, Lois. Oh, Lois Lane Clark, this is Penny Barnabedian.
Hello. Barnes.
What?
My name's not Barnabedian, it's Barnes. I lied about that. Ms. Lane, it's a pleasure.
Oh, well, this is great. We can all sit together.
Oh, actually, you know what? They're really full. I bet we wouldn't be able to...
Nonsense. I can get a table. Sulie, Miss Lane, 4 for dinner? Great.
Right this way.
Table's ready.
Excuse me.
Lois,
She's adorable, don't you think? A little weird, but cute.
remember the other night, that lipstick stain on my suit?
Yeah, you said some crazy woman...
我们要见公巴西的日兰牛肉，是多少人炒鱼片，先来一粒三鲜瓜巴汤，推荐，谢谢。
Isn't she something?
Yeah, something. So, Penny, how did you meet Jimmy?
I was interviewing him.
It was an assignment for a journalism class.
Oh, so you're a journalism major.
No,
You're not.
no, it was all a lie.
Really? Well, you're nothing if not honest.
I just wanted to meet him.
Alright, so let's get into the main story. And the lead here, mistaken identity.
Yes.
We kick off actually with Lois trying her best to organize a surprise party for Clark's birthday. And he's constantly having to fly off and do Superman business, which I think is an interesting thing. You know, he's not always just out saving people. He has commitments, and in this case, he has to fly out to New Zealand and reopen a hospital. I thought it was a cool, just little way to sort of show how their relationship can get kind of strained.
Oh, yeah.
You know, later when he reveals the pocketbook and everything with Superman's commitments in it.
Exactly, yeah. It's like lately, it seems like episodes have been going like one from the next to the next to the next, like day after day, you know? So we've seen them like in this type of day after day life. So we haven't gotten a chance to see what he does when he's not out saving people and he's just not Clark. He has other responsibilities that he commits to, you know, years ahead of time. So it was kind of neat to see.
While we're talking about it, we may as well get into that part of it. We were talking a few episodes back about how we kind of got this sense that Lois and Clark together is what makes Superman.
Right.
And here, it kind of feels like, you know, Lois has been left out of a huge part of Superman. You know, the planning of these events and the tons of fan mail, you know, which kind of made me think of, like, Santa Claus, you know. The post office just holds any letters addressed to Superman.
Exactly.
And every now and again, he picks them up and returns them.
In all fairness, they really did just get married and move in together. So
It's true.
with how fast he can answer the fan mail, he's probably done it before, but he's just never had to worry about someone else being being there to see him do it because they didn't live together. You know, like they'd go out on a date or whatever. They'd say goodnight and he'd go back to his place. And then, probably for, 2 minutes, he'd be like, oh, let me do the mail. And it's done, So he's probably been doing it all along. It's just that now that they're living together, she actually gets to see this side of him. And I would say going forward, he definitely needs to talk with Lois about time, and when to schedule these things.
Yeah.
Like he never had to worry about it before because, like I said, he always had time, just to go and do these things. But now that he's in a relationship and they're living together and everything, they got to communicate on the schedule.
And it does end up being like a very modern view of things. He's got his super fans and he's got young women sending him panties in the mail.
Exactly.
Lois doesn't quite know what to do with that.
Yeah, I like that. The whole, are they the crazy or the sick? Or are they both?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, actually. I don't mind it. But the real focus of this episode is this woman, Penny.
Yes.
Who has spent the better part of the last couple of years organizing how to get her computer to figure out who Superman is, because she's working on the theory that Superman has a secret identity. And the match comes back to a person who works at the Daily Planet. Mr. Jimmy Olsen.
This reminds me when there was when Superman was rebooted, in the 80s, which is what inspired this kind of take on Superman. There was an issue where Lex Luthor was standing on the cover looking at a big, like a huge, typical bad guy computer that fills up the whole room, with a big screen and everything. And on it, there's a lady sitting next to him or sitting at the computer typing. And on the screen, it says, Clark Kent is Superman, with like a big question mark on it. Like he's been using the computer to do the exact same thing, to keep track of when he showed up and where he makes the most appearances and where he ends up, like direction, flying and all this stuff. And it came to the conclusion that Clark Kent was Superman, but they disproved it, of course, in that issue. But still, it reminds me of that.
It's the cool idea.
Yeah.
She comes to this conclusion that it's Jimmy. And I thought, what's with the disguise then? Like, Jimmy and Superman really don't look like each other.
No.
So I was a bit like, whatever. But then you get later, the way she speaks to him kind of makes you think that she's drawn this conclusion that maybe he transforms into Superman. So he sort of like his physical shape changes.
Yeah, because people don't know. I mean, they know Superman's an alien and they know his powers that he shows off, but they don't know. Maybe he does, shapeshift into a different form. You're just like Martian Manhunter, because he looks totally different. And he just shapeshifts into his human form. So, yeah, it's possible that's what she's thinking.
And she goes full in, and she is convinced that her computer wizardry has paid off, and this is fact. She takes it as gospel truth. And while all this is going on, we get, like, the most generic evil genius with a vaporizing weapon that you've ever seen.
Yep, exactly.
Garrett Grady.
See, there's his name. I didn't even know. Didn't even know, because it just didn't stick with me at all.
I recognize the actor, though.
Oh, yeah. Awesome.
Dwight Schultz, right, from the A-Team. He played Mad Murdock.
And for the Next Gen fans, he played Lieutenant Barclay on Star Trek.
Right, yes, he did too. I forgot about that. Broccoli. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, and pretty much he's got this basic plan. Apparently, at some point, the government built some sort of weapons platform. And he's trying to bribe astronauts who are actually going up to dismantle the thing.
Yes.
To indeed actually do the reverse. He wants them to put a weapon on the platform so he can, as he says, make world peace or something, but really he just wants to take over the world.
Yeah, he's kind of like, in the way he's thinking, he's very psychotic. He's like, yes, we're going to kill people to get world peace, and Superman will be on board with this. It's like, you're crazy, I mean, come on. So yeah, it's not the best plan in the world, because that's terrible thinking. That's deranged thinking.
Yeah, exactly. It's a vaporizing gun. And since this astronaut, Steve McBride, who he just spends the first part just calling him Steve-O, he won't do it. So they use said vaporizing weapon to kill the guy. This is what gets Lois and Clark onto him.
That weapon, at first, when they were in the office there and he used the weapon, I thought it was just an illusion. Like, I thought it was like a hologram showing what the weapon can do. But it's an actual weapon. He actually has a small version of the actual weapon, destroying a holographic building in his... I'm like, what? What? Okay. whatever.
Yeah, it's super cliched.
Yeah.
Super duper cliched.
Oh, and then I got to say the other thing, and I don't know, like, it was odd to me, and I don't know if anybody else noticed it, but like Steve-O, he had on that leather jacket, which was a nice looking leather jacket, but then on the back, it's just like they slapped like a NASA sign on his back. Like it looked like they printed it out and like taped it on the back somehow, because it just seemed odd to have like this nice leather jacket with just a big old NASA square sign on the back. Like I was just like, come on, you couldn't afford just like NASA couldn't afford like a nice jacket that just has NASA like printed on it nicely. It's just like they big slap this big white piece of paper on. It was just odd to me. Like I was like, that's distracting me.
Can we talk to wardrobe about this, please? Somebody.
Exactly. I mean, come on.
Somebody's got to get fired over this.
I mean, we get he's an astronaut. We don't need you to put the sign on his back, basically saying, "I am an actual astronaut working for NASA." I mean, he looked fine. It was a leather jacket. We understand he is not a hoodlum. He is a NASA astronaut. We get it. Continue.
Yeah. Since Penny is just like convinced by what's going on, she calls up the Daily Planet. She wants to interview Jimmy, gets him out to have lunch. She's talking about, she's dropping sort of cues, and I think because Justin Whalen, he plays it like so nervous, like.
Yeah, very nervous.
That he gets that she's saying things to him that he doesn't understand, but because it's a beautiful woman talking to him, you kind of get that he's just not going to say anything about it. He's just going to let it roll. And then there's this car crash that Jimmy's like, he does the Clark thing. Hey, I'm just going to go call 911.
Yeah.
And Superman swoops in and saves the day, and naturally she takes this as confirmation of her theory. So they start dating, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Then there's this scene later where she reveals that she's not, like a grad student interviewing people or something. And they go to her office, like, which is Grady's office. And she activates this, like, sound dampener that he has there.
Uh-huh.
And then they have a conversation about him being Superman, to which, of course, Jimmy's not going to deny.
Yeah.
But then the henchman overhears this conversation from outside?
Yes, with the soundproofing on.
Like, they made such the effort that she turned it on.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I was like, gosh, he was so creepy, creeping around the window there, which kind of makes it makes more sense to know that he actually hit on her earlier. So it kind of, it does lead to the creep factor with him a little bit more.
And I mean, like, their plan was just to, like, try and bribe the next astronaut that they were going to replace Steve-O with. And that goes nowhere. Like, they even mix it up. They say, oh, they've replaced it with this female astronaut.
Yeah.
We can bribe her. We'll get her in our pocket. Goes nowhere.
Nope.
Because really, the whole story is just about Jimmy and Penny and the mix-up. And it actually gets kind of funny because, she calls him out. Like, she has sex with Jimmy. Yep. And then she's putting on lipstick and she cries out for Superman. Yeah. And she kisses him. And then later, Lois and Clark go to dinner and they see Jimmy and Penny there. And Clark's just like, remember I told you about that crazy woman who, like, accosted me on the streets?
Right.
That's her. And immediately Lois is like, I don't trust this woman. So what do you think of this whole interplay of, like, she thinks Jimmy's Superman, he hasn't said anything, and then Lois and Clark kind of know what's going on?
Well, they don't know that he's pretending to be Superman with her, though.
I guess that does come out later, yeah.
But yeah, I think it's funny. I don't think Jimmy would he actually do that? I mean, I know he's kind of a horn dog in this series, and always after the women, but I don't know if he could actually, I don't know if he would actually do that, because him and Superman in the comics are supposed to be like best buds. He's his pal, basically. Superman's pal, Jimmy Olsen, is what they say. So it's fine. It's funny, but I don't think I don't think he would actually do that.
I did think the whole lipstick thing was kind of funny, though.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen that in sitcoms before, where the guy somehow gets lipstick on his shoulder, or on his collar innocently, and then it leads to this whole thing. I was thinking it would go to somewhere like that, where she gets really jealous, but it didn't go there.
But just the funny part of it, where he's like he just stops some sort of oil spill or something, and he's just like, that came out of the suit just fine, but this lipstick, I mean, he's like rubbing at it, it just won't come off. So funny. Penny ends up being, like, lured away back to the office because, Grady knows what's going on because of the henchman who has, like, super hearing, I guess, whatever.
Yep. Exactly.
Lois follows because she doesn't trust this woman, and they're both captured. So Penny calls Jimmy, like, this is where they have the conversation. Like, Jimmy, like, calls for Superman. And, like, just the way that Superman reacts to, like, Jimmy saying, like, she thought I was you, and I didn't tell her that I wasn't.
Right.
And, like, ran this, like, computer thing, and apparently, like, if you had a secret identity, then I would be you. We talked about it in the investigation of it, but the interplay there I thought was really good.
Oh yeah, because like he wants the information, but Jimmy's so apologetic and sorry for what he's done, and Superman's like, Jimmy, you can't be other people. You got to learn to be yourself. Okay? It's like he sort of just like throws it off real quick. It's like, give me the information. I got to go save them. You know.
The moral here is so easy, Jimmy. So I'm just gonna spell it out. Let's go and save them.
Exactly.
And then it's your basic wrap up. Like he's like, I've got your girl, Superman. Put my weapon up on this platform and I'll let them go. And he's just like, no, I'm Superman and I'm just gonna beat you now.
Well, he did get him to take it up. It's just like, but then like he just aimed it at the controls. You know, it's like, idiot, why are you leaving the controls out on the roof? You know. It's like, come on.
Oh my god, it's so dumb.
I know, it is.
I'm sorry, this is just one of the dumbest bad guys ever.
We've had a bunch of them too. So
yeah. And then we're gonna do the whole wrap up here. Jimmy is revealed to not be Superman, but he did face off against the henchman guy. What was his name? Peters.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh my god, you could have been killed. And they're so happy.
So they'll be together forever now, right?
We'll find out, I guess. Probably not. And then, they stumble back into the townhouse making out, and Perry has pulled off the ultimate surprise party. Ha ha ha.
Yeah.
Which I thought was kind of funny. Perry's just like, I figured the best way we could do this is just not tell Lois either.
Exactly. Yeah, it was a nice little bookender.
Yeah. Perry's always good value.
Yes.
And that's pretty much it. And I had like very little in the bylines. All I wrote here in the bylines, Jimmy buys a blue suit.
Yeah, pretty much. That's pretty much it. It's a pretty focused episode, there really isn't like an alternate storyline here. It's all focused on that. So yeah, that's pretty much the only thing.
It's a super weak episode. I mean, it could have been so much better. There could have been so much more humor injected into this.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's weak. The bad guy's super weak.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the bad guy was weak enough. I didn't even remember what his name was. And I was like, I'm not even going to look it up because I don't think it matters that much for this episode.
Who cares?
It's like, who cares?
Superman, honey, I knew you'd come. Wait a minute. You aren't Superman?
I'm sorry, Penny. I'm sorry I'm not what you thought I was.
But you lied to me. What kind of a person are you? The things I told you, and you never... You really are just some normal guy, aren't you?
Yeah.
Wait a minute. He had a gun. You could have been killed.
Shall we check out some back issues?
So Zoomway actually said about this episode that it was interesting because it's about actualization and fantasizing. And, in the beginning of the series, Lois was the fantasizer, about Superman. She was always thinking about that. And then here, things have been changed around where Penny is a fantasizer and Lois is actually an actualizer. She's living in real life, But Penny is a lot worse as a fantasizer because she's not seeing Jimmy as who he is. She sees Jimmy as just like a lame guy disguise, and she's not really attracted to Jimmy himself, just what he can do, like who he is. Whereas Lois does, she is attracted to Clark himself, so she mentioned the difference there between the two of them, the difference over the years. Not that we've seen Penny before, but just making the point, how Lois has changed. She also mentioned, which I didn't know, was that Melissa Joan Hart was supposed to play Penny at first.
Oh, really?
And for some reason, she either had to bow out or Jimmy convinced them to give his girlfriend a job. So I don't know.
Maybe Melissa was just gearing up to do Sabrina.
Yeah, maybe. Could have been. They said, flattest storyline ever. That girlfriend cannot act, All right. Well, some thought, like I did, that this was going to be an alternate world story, especially given the title, aka Superman. They said, given what we just watched, the previous 2 episodes, they had seen in their minds Perry, as mayor in that alternate universe,
right?
Saying something like, "I'd like to introduce y'all to my best friend here, Clark Kent, aka Superman." Like that would have been perfect. And I think that's why I thought it was going to be a 3-parter as well, because of that title. I was thinking, oh, this is going to be a continuation into that, to that world.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Alas, we were all wrong then and now. Oh well. Someone did ask, which is just weird. I was like, sometimes you get some weird things on these old forums that they used to talk on. And someone was like, does anyone have any pictures or screen caps from when Penny and Lois were tied up together? Links or pictures would be great.
Oh, my God.
I'm like, what? What the heck are you asking about? No one responded.
Just throw some panties in an envelope.
Exactly.
Shoot them off to ABC and see the response.
Exactly. Let's see. As far as Tempest goes, everyone loved Tempest. They thought Alt Clark was great, but why? Why does every episode have to end with Lois and Clark kissing? I mean, every episode lately, kiss to end the episode. They said alternate Clarks. How about alternate endings? Let's try that. How about that? No kissing at the end of an episode, please. So I gotta agree with them on that.
Yeah, we get it. We wanted the romance, but this,
Exactly. Yeah. There's more to romance than just kissing. Someone said that, I don't know if this was posted somewhere, like on an official page or whatever, or an announcement was made somewhere in some article at this point. But back then they said, well, the powers that be have said they plan to go back and resolve the Alt Clark and Lois storyline. So, maybe they'll do that later this season or next season, because they were still under the belief, I guess, that there's going to be another season. And they said, yeah, we'll take care of that. We're going to revisit it, which they never did, of course, but still that they intended to, I guess, at some point, which is neat. Zoomway, again, for this episode, she was talking about how Alt Clark functions to show us how our Clark must have felt in the first season. In this one, we have Alt Clark who's really taken with Lois and enjoying the chemistry and how frustrated he is that they can't be together. And it kind of shows us why in that first season, our Clark used the Superman identity to get closer to Lois a lot, because he was that much in love with her. Like, he felt that chemistry, even back then in the first season, he was feeling that chemistry from her, just like Alt Clark is feeling it now, barely knowing her, So she said it was nice that they sort of used him in that way to show, how much they belong together. So that was cool. It's a neat look on that. And then Alt Clark was, a lot of people said this, Alt Clark was just like our Clark. Over in his world, Charlton Heston is president. He's been living a year as Superman publicly. He should be different, And like I said, iReactions said he should be different as well. Zoomway did notice that there were more subtle ways that he was different. For example, Clark stands not with his hands in his pockets in the front, like usually, like our Clark does with a suit, but he puts his hands in his back pockets, and she said his palms were facing outward, not like our Clark does. And she says he had a different tilt of his head and his eyebrow, but she said, I admit, I kind of watched Dean very closely, so maybe not everybody noticed this stuff. And then finally, people were lamenting about the show, and the ratings weren't doing very well, but that this episode, the last couple episodes, the Tempest episodes, were great, and they really wish people would come back, because it's the show was turned around, but people left and they just haven't come back, which is too bad.
I know. Sad.
It is.
Well, there it is. All right, our next issue, we're going to be talking about Faster Than a Speeding Vixen and Shadow of a Doubt.
Now, I know this is the one I was thinking of. Vixen is the android that I was telling you. There's an episode where he has a fight an android. So
okay.
This is the one. And I know that there's a character in DC Comics called Vixen as well, but I don't think these are related from what I remember at all.
They have the license to the name, so let's see.
Right.
Just
Exactly.
like Deathstroke, right?
Oh, God. It's got to be better than that.
Super magnets. Oh.
And then Shadow of a Doubt. I'm not sure. I'm trying to think. I thought wasn't there a character already? Or maybe this is the one I'm thinking of. Was there a character in season 1 or 2 that was a shadow and could like infiltrate places, or no?
I don't remember.
All right. If not, then this must be that episode.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure there's a villain that can actually turn into a shadow and was able to like slide under doors and get through windows and things because he was just a shadow, so he could actually infiltrate, high security places. So I think that might be this episode.
It sounds creepy.
Anyway, whatever it is, we'll find out next week, because that's it for this issue of the Rewatch Podcast. Keep up with listener interaction by liking our Facebook page at facebook.com/Rewatch Podcast or facebook.com/Lois and Clark Rewatch, and follow the show on Twitter at Rewatch Pod. You can also visit our webpage at rewatchpodcast.podomatic.com, which has links to some of our favorite sites there, such as the forums at zoomway.net, folc.wiki.com, and the supermanhomepage.com. And don't forget, we've also got links to our archive of film rewatch episodes.
And remember, you can always write us an email or record a voice message. Send it to the rewatchpodcast@gmail.com. And also, if you've enjoyed the show, please consider giving us a rate and review on iTunes. And you can help support the Rewatch Podcast by heading to patreon.com/Rewatch Podcast and make a monthly contribution as little as $1. And we're up on YouTube. You can find every single episode that we've ever done there. So search Rewatch Podcast and subscribe today. All right. Well, as always, thank you for joining me, Tom.
Yep.
And I would just say, until next time, my boy, I never say impossible.
We gotta fly.
The Rewatch Podcast is not associated with Warner Brothers Television, ABC, Gangbuster Films Incorporated, or Roundelay Productions.
Don't believe everything you see on TV.
The use of any and all copyrighted material is only for parody, news analysis, critique, or educational purposes as provided in United States Code Title 17, aka Fair Use.
Let's get legal on this.
Music provided by Kevin McCloud at incompetech.com.
Great shades of Elvis.
Copyright 2017, The Rewatch Podcast.
Where are your beepers? We'll be in touch.